Please be seated. The court is now in session. For today's proceeding, the trial chamber will hear the testimony of a civil party, that is through TCCP 304, as informed by an email by the senior legal officer of the trial chamber on the afternoon last week. And Ms. Jia Siu Huang, could you report the attendance of the parties and individuals to today's proceedings? Mr. President, for today's proceedings, all parties to discuss are present. As for Mr. Noon Chia, he is present in the holding cell downstairs as he requests to waive his rights to be present in the courtroom. His waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to testify today, that is through TCCP 304, is present. President, thank you, Ms. Ji Siu Huang. The chamber now decides on the request by Noon Chia. The chamber has received a waiver from Noon Chia, dated 24 March 2015, and he confirms that through his poor health condition, that is headache, back pain, and that he cannot sit for long, and in order to effectively participate in the future hearings, requests to waive his right to participate in and be present at the 24th March 2015 hearing. He has been informed by his counsel about the consequence of this waiver, that in no way it can be construed as a waiver of his rights to be tried fairly or to challenge evidence presented or admitted to this court at any time during this trial. Having seen the medical report by the duty doctor for the accused Noon Chia at the ECCC, dated 24th March 2015, who notes that the health condition of Noon Chia is that he is unchanged, but he has a chronic back pain and cannot sit for long, and recommends that the chamber shall grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Noon Chia's request to follow the proceedings remotely from a holding cell downstairs via an audio-visual means for today's proceedings, as he waives his direct presence in the courtroom. The AV unit is instructed to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Noon Chia can participate in and follow today's proceedings remotely. For the proceeding to hear the testimony of through TCCP 304, which is scheduled for today and tomorrow morning, the chamber will follow the decisions of a protective measure, as in the decision of the trial chamber dated 19 March 2015, that is document E316/2/2, which the trial chamber orders that the voice and the video of this witness shall not be made public. For that reason, the trial chamber orders the AV unit to block the audio and video of this witness. And as for the personal background and information of this civil party, as well as his place of birth, his family members' names, and his occupations, shall also be kept confidential. And due to the technical issues, the chamber will appoint Mr. Nham Sam Nang to sit next to the civil party in order to assist with the voice transformation or blocking. And Mr. Civil Party, can you tell the chamber your name? President, Mr. Civil Party, please respond to the chamber question. As for the assistant, you will be advised as to when you shall act. The chamber needs to hear the name of this civil party. Civil party, Mr. President, my name is Sot Sang. And Mr. Civil Party, can you tell the chamber your date of birth? Answer. I was born in the year of 1957. President, thank you. Can you read and write the Khmer language? Answer. I did not study the Khmer letters or Khmer alphabets in details, so I cannot read or write the Khmer language. President, as the civil party cannot read and write, Mr. Nham Sam Nang, a member of RISU, is assigned to read or to whisper to the civil party the question and the answer by making a tick on the document in his hand. And Mr. Nham Sam Nang, do you have that list of questions with you? And if that is the case, please make the arrangement as instructed by the trial chamber. In fact, there are 5 questions on that document. And all parties are informed that the question is about his place of birth, about his current address, and the third question is about his current occupation, and question number 4 is about his father's name and mother's names, and question number 5 is about his wife's name and the number of children. That is the list of questions about his personal information and background. Mr. Assistant, please do it in a whispering form and don't speak too loud. and consult with the civil party as to which response he takes. Mr. President and the Defense Council, you have the floor. Kung Samont, while the civil party is reviewing the list of questions by the chamber, I have a small suggestion as to the petition to block the civil party from the public. I think the partition should be a bit lower so that the bench can actually have a clear view of the civil party while the block is still effective for the audience sitting behind him. And I'd like to also review the response by the civil party when he finishes answering the list of questions by the chamber. President, in fact, this is the only petition that we have, and it has been set up, or it has been prepared since the commencement of case 001. And with your suggestions, the chamber will take it into consideration. And the court officer, please go and get the list of questions from the research support staff. And the court officer, please take the document for the Defense Council's review before it can be included into the case file. President and Mr. Civil Party, towards the end of your testimony, do you have a right, or rather you will be given an opportunity to make a statement of impact of what happened to you during the period of Democratic Cambodia, if you wish to do so. And please indicate to the chamber as whether you wish to take that opportunity. And pursuant to Rule 91 bis of the internal rules of the ECCC, the lead co-lawyers for the civil party will be given the opportunity first to put a question to the civil party, and the combined time for both the civil party lead co-lawyers and for the prosecution is 1 full morning and 1 session in the afternoon. You may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to give the floor to my colleague Kim In-ki, who will begin with the questions.
Civil Party lawyer. Good morning, Mr. President. My name is Lam In-ki. I am a civil party lawyer to put questions to this civil party, that is through TCCP 304. And good morning, Mr. Witness. I have some questions to put to you, and the first question is the following. Before 17 April 1975, where were you and what were you doing? Answer. In 1975, I was a soldier protecting the province of Takeo. Question. Can you tell the court which unit or division you belong to and whether you became a soldier at your own will? Answer. At that time, I did not volunteer to join it. I was compelled to join the force as we were not allowed to stay behind in the village with our parents. Question. Can you tell the court what kinds of tasks or duties that you did while you were in that duty unit? I was in that unit, and I was first asked to carry earth and to dig canals. Question. And can you describe in general what you did after that and at which location in a chronological form, if you can recall it? Answer. At that time, I was building the dam in Cambodia, and the dam still exists today. I also involved in digging a canal stretching from Cambodia to Tropang Kul. Question. And please continue. After you finish, for example, working at that work site, what you did next, and in which year, for instance, and at what location, and what was your role at that time. Can you do that? Answer. Let me go through the earlier years. In 1971, I was still living with my parents, and around 1971 or 72, my father was imprisoned in office 204, and in around 1972 or 73, I joined the army, and up in the year, rather from that year up to the year 1975 or 76, I was still a soldier. But then, by 1975, my unit was assigned to protect or to be stationed near the Damrai Romil mountain, and the purpose of being assigned there was to go and capture Ta Prum San, although I did not know who Ta Prum San was. That person, that is Ta Prum San, was accused of being a traitor, and with that instructions, we went to base ourselves there, and we remained there until 1977. And let me go back a little bit. In fact, in 1975, my firearm was stolen, And then I was accused of giving that firearm to Prumsan's clique. And in fact, at that time, soldiers on patrol took my firearm as I was staying in bed, contracted with malaria at the time. I was then re-educated for one whole afternoon. And I was strongly advised not to betray the party or the army. So I stayed there in Tropang Lip area, that is with the army, during 1976. And by 1977, I was assigned to Krang Tachan. Question. You mentioned a person by the name of Prum San. Did you know that person? That is Prum San? And who was him? And did you actually capture him? Answer. I did not know Prum San at that time. I did not know him because I heard that he lived in Tram Kok and I was in Liebo. And only after 1975 he became chief of the Tram Kok commune, and by that time I knew him. So that is after 1979, and later on he died in Tram Kok commune. Question. You also stated that while you were there, you lost your firearm, and then you were re-educated. Later on, you were transferred to Krang Tachan. Can you expand a little bit further on the events around this period of time? Answer. When my firearm was stolen, as I was resting in a trench with two other soldiers, and I was reassured by my other two soldiers that I could rest in the trench and leave the firearm just at the edge of the trench, but actually it was stolen, and as a consequence I was re-educated for one afternoon, and then I remained with that army, and for no clear reason I was transferred to Krang Tachan, that is to provide security there, or simply means to guard Krang Tachan. Questions. So, upon your arrival at Krang Tachan, you was assigned as a guard there. Is that correct? Answer. I was transferred to Krang Tachan, but initially I was not allowed to go into the compound. I was put into a youth unit in Chakchurum Pagoda, and I remained there for several months. And at that, during a rice transplanting season, that is a Kramun saw brand of rice, I engaged in the transplanting of that rice at the Krang Tachan. Question. So first you stayed at Chachrum Pagoda, then you involved in the rice transplantation at the Krang Tachan. Were you considered a staff member of Krang Tachan Center or a prisoner at the time of the rice transplantation? Answer. Initially, when I was assigned, I was ordered to stay at Chachrum Pagoda and later on I was accompanied by a combatant to Krang Tachan, and then I was handed over to Krang Tachan. Then the army commander there who was studying in an office in a village whose name I cannot recall clearly. It could be pronounced Chan Tip. That person told me that I now would be transferred to Krang Tachan for tampering, and that I had to sacrifice myself and be loyal to the party in order to defend the revolution, to make it more prosperous. Question. So subsequently, you started working at Krang Tachan. Is that correct? That is after you made a commitment to defend the party? Answer. After I was advised and educated, then I followed the advice of the parties. And I remained there until 1978, when I was sent to fight against the Vietnamese troops. Question. Can you state the year again? From which year to which year you worked at the Krang Tachan Security Center? Answer. I started working at Krang Tachan office from 1977, and by 1978 I was transferred back to Division 210 in order to go to the battlefield to fight against the Vietnamese troops.
Counsel, question. Thank you, Mr. Witness. Could you describe for the court what were you assigned to do there? Answer. At Krang Tachan Security Office, first, I was indoctrinated by the chief of the security, so that I could provide security and safety for the whole Krang Tachan Security Office. Number two, I was asked to voice my commitment that if one person or prisoner could escape, my life would end. Question. You were in charge of the security. You were guarding the place to avoid the escape of the prisoner. Is that true? Answer. After I was indoctrinated, I complied with their plan until I escaped that place and was transferred to my army. Question. Later on, could you tell the court when you were working there as a security guard, what was the structure of the guard unit? Was there a chief, and who was responsible for what duties? Answer. I could recall some of the information because it has been over 30 years. The head of the security office was Ta An, Ta Ping, Ta Cheng. The three individuals were heads, they were the leaders of the security office of Krang Tajan area. I recall Chiang Muon, and I could not recall all the names. Counsel, thank you very much. Could you tell the courts where were the prisoner arrested and sent from? Answer. When I was a guard, the people from the security office did not go to collect the prisoner. There were special units in communes, districts, and sectors in respective areas. So those special units would send the prisoner to the security office, and people in the security office would go outside the compound to collect the prisoners. Counsel, thank you very much. As a guard at that place, when prisoner went into the security office, were their name registered or were they photographed? Answer. I did not make any records concerning the number of the prisoners or victims. I was not aware of it. Counsel. When prisoner entered into the security office, where were they detained after their arrival? Answer. Upon arrival, prisoners would be put in a house, and their ankles were shackled. Counsel, Were prisoners interrogated and tortured? Answer: yes. Prisoners were interrogated by the security, by people working in the security office. Counsel: were they interrogated or killed at that security office? Answer: yes. A prisoner were interrogated. They were beaten up. They were plastic bag were tied around their face, their eyes. Answer: besides beating and besides the plastic bag was used to tie their eyes. So what were others treatment or other measure that they used on those prisoners? Answer: I was not aware of any other types of torture. Counsel: were prisoners released to go outside? Did they have freedom to go outside? Answer: yes. Prisoners could may be relieved to go and live with their families and their relatives. Counsel: when you were there, did you recall how many prisoners were brought in one day and how many prisoners were released? Answer: as a guard at the outside compound, the numbers varied. Sometimes there were no prisoners coming in. Prisoners would be brought from mobile units or from cooperatives into the security office. I was guarding at the east of the compound, and perhaps one day there were only 2 or 3 prisoners brought in, but the number varied, as I said. Counsel: thank you very much. What about the prisoners who were released? Were there many of them released from the security office? Answer: as for the survivor from the security office, I don't think there were many of them. Counsel: what about the type of prisoners? Were there any were there any children who were detained there, or were there any infants? Answer: from my observation, children and baby, they were coming with their parents. Counsel: were there was a separation of children, baby, or male and female prisoners in that area? Answer. During that time, the babies or children live with their parents. Counsel, thank you very much. In relation to health issue and hygiene of the prisoners, were medicines provided to the prisoners, or were prisoners allowed to clean themselves regularly? Answer. I was a guard at the outer perimeter. Prisoners in the detention facility were not allowed to clean themselves, or they were not provided medicines. Counsel, thank you. Did you ever hear about the incidents of rape or torture against female prisoners? Answer. From my observation among the personnel there, I did not see any mistreatment on female prisoners. But I think that some female prisoners were already raped, and after that they were brought into the security office. Counsel, I would like to clarify your answer. What did you mean by the fact that prisoners from outside were raped and after that they were brought into the office? Answer. I would like to make a clarification on this matter. Some people had committed moral offenses, and after that these people were brought in to the security office for re-education. Counsel, thank you very much. Concerning the food ration for prisoners, what was the food ration for prisoners or for people who were detained in the office? Answer. Concerning the food ration, prisoners did not have enough food to eat. They could have gruel mixed with cassava or potato. Sometimes prisoners could have only the watery gruel. Counsel, thank you very much. I am now running out of questions in relation to Krang Thachan Security Office, but I have a last question for you. My question is, you said that you were transferred in 1978 to go into battle with Vietnamese. So could you clarify this for the court? Answer. In 1978, all soldiers were collected and they were put into the division in order to go to battle to fight the Vietnam. Counsel, what did you mean? You meant all soldiers were conscripted and collected to fight the Vietnamese who were coming into the territory of Cambodia? Answer. I did not know the detail. However, in 1978, I was transferred to Division 102 set by Civil Party, and I was assigned to go and fight the Vietnamese who entered the territory of Cambodia. Council, thank you very much. I finished my line of questioning. Thank you very much, the trial chamber, which allowed me to put question to the civil party.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. We no longer have any questions on this side of the civil parties. I will give the floor to the prosecution.
President, I now hand over the floor to the International Deputy Co-Prosecutor. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honors, good morning, Mr. Civil Party. I want to follow up first with something you just testified to. You said that you didn't see mistreatment of female prisoners, but that some had been already raped before they were brought to the security center. And you then explained that some people had committed moral offenses and were therefore brought to the security center for re-education. I'd like you to clarify, did you mean by this that there were women who had been raped who were brought to Krang Tachan as prisoners for committing moral offenses?
Answer. I was not aware of it, but I knew that people had moral offenses and were brought into the security office, and I did not know how the people view those people who had moral offenses.
You said that there were female prisoners who had been raped before arriving at the security center. How did you know that?
Answer. For example, prisoners who had committed moral offenses, they were not allowed to go outside the compound to carry fertilizer or cow dung. And I had some occasion asked them and chatted with them. That's why I knew that they had committed moral offenses.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Let me go back. I wanted to ask you some questions relating to your status in this case. You were first interviewed by the investigating judges on the 28th of November 2007, and the following year, in August 2008, after you had been located and interviewed by OCIJ as a witness, you filed to become a civil party. Can you tell the court why you wanted to become a civil party?
Answer. I filed an application to be a civil party because I had my father and my siblings or relatives died in the period.
I want to ask you about some testimony that another civil party, Sai Sen, has given in this court on the 5th of February 2015. This is at E1/257.1 at around 11:21:55 to 11:24:20. And the civil party, Sai Sen, testified here about some communications you had with him regarding what he would say to this court. And I quote, question, is Sang afraid of what you may tell the investigators and the tribunal regarding the role he played at Krang Tachan? Did he give you any advice regarding that? Answer, he used to talk to me and tell me that if I was asked anything about him, please just tell that we were prisoners at that time before. Now he addresses me as Bong, and he suggested that I should say only that he was the prisoner there as well. He told me once or twice about this. He suggested this once or twice. End of quote. My question to you, Mr. Sotsang, is it fair to say that you were worried or concerned about having to testify at this tribunal about what took place at Krang Tachan?
Merci, Monsieur. Sous votre contrôle et à la demande de l'avocat de la partie civile, il me semblait que nous n'avions pas le droit de mentionner son nom et qu'il était préférable d'utiliser un pseudonyme.
Under your supervision, Mr. President, it would appear that we are not entitled to use the civil party's name. It would be appropriate for us to use a pseudonym.
I'm sorry, the memo I received said that we are allowed to use the name of the civil party. Mr. Civil Party, do you remember my question? My question is, did you have concerns or worries about having to testify at this tribunal about what took place at Krang Tachan?
Answer. Talking about Mr. Soy Sign, I did not know when he was brought into the security office. Soy Sign have never talked to me, and he never lived in the same village of mine. But I was invited to his child wedding, and I did not talk to him on the fact that I was afraid to talk about the incidents at Krang Tachan security office. I have never spoken with him about this matter.
My question to you, Mr. Civil Party, is whether you personally had concerns or worries about having to come here and testify about Krang Tachan.
Answer. I have filed an application to be a civil party. I have no worries, and I will testify before the court of what I have experienced.
Let me ask you a few questions regarding the period you worked in the district militia. Today, you told the court that you joined the Tramcock District Militia in 1972 or 1973. Do you remember the capture or liberation of Ang Tassam town by the Khmer Rouge in 1973?
In 1973, I was still in the militia unit, but I was not engaged in any fighting. I was actually assigned to carry the wounded in the battlefield.
I understand that you weren't engaged in fighting. Do you remember when Ang Tassam town was captured by the Khmer Rouge and what was done with the residents of that town when it was liberated?
When Ang Tassam town fell, although I knew that it was fell, I did not know the year.
And do you know what happened to the residents of the town after it was liberated?
I was engaged at the front, so I did not know actually what happened after Ang Tassam town fell.
Thank you. Let me turn to a few questions about the arrest and detention of your father at Office 204, which you told us today took place in 1971 or 1972. In answer 103 of your OCIJ interview E319.1.23, it's answer 103, you stated that you had, and I quote, a bad background involved with my father, who was accused of being a spy, end of quote. And in answers 30 to 31 of that same interview, you testified as follows, quote, question, what were grounds for arrest? Answer, based on my observation, I did not see any grounds. But in the case of my father in 1971, the Khmer Rouge military accused my father of being a spy. At that time, my father was sent to undergo training at Office 204, end of quote. What and where was Office 204?
President, Mr. Witness, please wait. And Defense Counsel, you have the floor. Defense Counsel, Mr. President, I'd like to object to the question raised by the co-prosecutor as the fact was outside the temporal jurisdiction of this court as it happened pre-1975.
Your Honors, there had been testimony about these offices and their establishment in the period prior to then in order to establish policy of the Khmer Rouge. That's the reason for the question here.
President, the objection by the Defense Counsel is overruled. Although it is out of the scope, it is related to the facts being debated before this court, and the witness is instructed to respond to the last question put to you by the Deputy International Co-Prosecutor. And yes, please respond, Mr. Witness. Answer. In 1971, the incident involving the arrest of my father, it happened during the fight that broke out between the Tribunal army and the Liberation Force. It happened on the 8th day of a Khmer lunar calendar. He was, my father was at a school, and during the fighting between the Tribunal force and the Khmer Rouge force, my father was arrested as he was being accused of a spy working for the Tribunal side.
Can you tell us what was your father's occupation at the time he was arrested? And why was he accused of being a spy?
He did not hold any position. In fact, he was faithful to Buddhist religion, and he was known as Acha Krom. And he went to seek Buddhist disciplines at that building in the pagoda.
Just so I'm clear, you're saying your father was an Achar at the time he was arrested?
He is not a real professional Achar, but he was just an Achar in the village.
Do you know why he was accused of being a spy?
The Liberation Force accused him of being a spy because a monk from Ksang Pagoda came through that building where my father was, and that monk was arrested, and they found a binocular on that monk. For that reason, all the Achars, including my father, were arrested and sent to be detained at office 204.
And do you know where Office 204 was located?
I only heard of Office 204 and I had never been there.
In answer 45 of the same interview I mentioned a while ago, E319.1.23, you stated that your father was arrested in 1971 and detained for a period of 2 years. After he was released, did your father tell you anything about Office 204 and what took place there while he was detained at Office 204.
I actually asked him after he was released from Office 204, and he told me that there was no need for me to know, and that I should just do what the revolution of what Anka assigned me to do. And in late 1973, he died.
In his trial testimony on the 21st of January 2015 in this court, the reference is E1 249.1 at 11:07:28 through 11:09:31. Witness Mias Soka provided the following testimony. Quote, Office 204 was a detention center for former Law Nol officials who had been arrested from Ang to Som or elsewhere, and the rich or the capitalists were also detained in that office, which was located to the west of Trapiang Kran Hung. End of quote. Do you know whether Office 204 was a site at which former Law Nol officials were detained?
As I stated at that time, I only heard of the name of Office 204, and that was all I knew about it. President, thank you, Mr. Deputy International Co-Prosecutor. It is now a convenience to have a 20-minute break. We take a break now and resume at 10:30. And court officer, please assist the witness during the break and invite him as well as the visual staff back into the courtroom at 10:30. And please draw the curtain before you invite the civil party out, and do the same when they return. The court is now in recess.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ